So I'm Dr. Ken Myers. I'm a pediatric neurologist. I subspecialize in epilepsy, and I also do a fair bit of research, and I work at the Montreal Children's Hospital, which is affiliated with McGill University. So I started out in pediatric neurology in general, and I tried out a lot of different areas of neurology. But for me, epilepsy is really exciting as an area to do research because it's a disease that has a huge impact on the people affected by it, but there's also a huge potential to help them. So the research I've done has just been exciting to actually see how it's helping people's lives, in the immediate kind of term. I think organizations like Epilepsy Canada are just incredibly important for the advocacy that they do on behalf of people with epilepsy, but also their ability to fund research and guide research that is really meaningful and impactful for people with epilepsy. When I was invited, I was very excited to try to be a part of that and sort of help them achieve their mission. One of the really difficult things in epilepsy is something called sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, which is a very tragic thing that can occur to people that have had seizures. Fortunately, it's something that's still not that well understood, and we still don't have a great sense of how to try to prevent it. So the project that I undertook that was funded by Epilepsy Canada was to try to see and better understand how epilepsy surgery could reduce that risk. We looked at the EEGs of people that had undergone epilepsy surgery before and after the surgery, and we actually looked at their heart rate because people with epilepsy often have abnormalities in the variability of their heart rate, and this is sort of a sign of a dysfunction of how that's moderated. And what we've actually seen in our study is that when people have epilepsy surgery that hopefully helps their seizure control, we also see an improvement in this heart rate variability that seems as though it is probably something that suggests a reduced risk of sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. The project generated a lot of data. We were looking at the time periods between heartbeats over long periods of time for a fairly large number of patients. So you can imagine if we have 60 to 100 heartbeats per minute, and we're looking at 30-minute to hour-long recordings, and we're doing that for 50 to 100 people, we end up with a lot of data. And analyzing those data and analyzing them properly was a challenge. But I think in the end we got to the right approach. I would say that was one of the big challenges. And I should credit Dr. Ralph Eberhard, who is the epilepsy fellow who did a lot of the work on that project. So I definitely still want to work on sudden unexpected death in epilepsy and better understanding it and finding ways to reduce the incidence of it. I have been sort of shifting my focus a little bit more towards clinical trials, and in particular clinical trials for rare causes of epilepsy, or rare mainly genetic causes of epilepsy, where we try to develop treatments that really get at the underlying genetic cause of the epilepsy. I think that's probably a very good way to help people have control of their seizures, but also to deal with the comorbidities that come along with epilepsy, like mood disorders, intellectual disability, or developmental impairment. So I'm very excited about kind of going in that direction. So I have a number of different clinical trials that are going already. I've been very fortunate so far. The ones I've started myself and designed, we've been able to get funding, actually also from nonprofits. But then I'm also helping with some industry-sponsored trials, and those have funding from pharmacy companies. So it definitely, in the area of clinical trials, it definitely can, because it sometimes doesn't take a huge amount of money to generate enough data to show the potential of a treatment. To do a full-scale clinical trial is usually quite expensive, but a little bit of money that helps you get that initial data can be all you need to set you up for a bigger grant. Yeah, so the organization has sort of changed a bit their model for how they take in funding applications and evaluate them. So in the past, there would be sort of once or twice a year a call for applications, and people would submit them, and there'd be a deadline, and then a few months later, people would be notified. But now we've gone to sort of a model where people can submit their applications at any time. They get evaluated after they're submitted. They get judged a bit more on the merits of the individual grant, rather than saying, we got 5 applications, we have to pick one. Yeah, I think in the old model, you can end up not getting to fund some things that maybe you would have liked to. But also you could theoretically end up funding something that you didn't think was that great, but you had said you would fund something, so you did. Yeah. When you're doing research, you always want to have things move as quickly as you can. It can certainly be frustrating if you have a project that you're excited about and you see a competition and the deadline is 4 months from now and the results are not going to come out until 10 months from now. And in the meantime, you have to sort of sit around waiting. And if you're not successful, then you have to start looking elsewhere. So with the rolling grants, you can basically submit. You'll hear pretty quickly, yes or no. And even if it's a no, you'll at least get some feedback that can reapply to Epilepsy Canada again. But if you're applying to other funding competitions, you get some feedback that might help you with your grant there. Epilepsy, although it's come a long ways, I think there is still quite a bit of stigma around it. And most of the time when I'm giving people a new diagnosis of epilepsy, they're very devastated, but often just when they hear the word, before I've even gotten to what their particular type of epilepsy is likely to be like. Because I think it's just a word that strikes a lot of fear into people. I'd like more people to understand that, well, absolutely, it's of course something that does have an impact on people's lives. There are many, many people living very, very normal, fulfilling, productive lives with epilepsy. And so the diagnosis does not mean that you can't go on doing that. Yeah, I think for me, it's a little bit related to some of the stuff I do, but I think the gene therapies are really, really exciting. Like the idea of being able to even correct a genetic mutation that is causing the person's epilepsy and potentially other issues. That if that's done early, we can almost eliminate some, at least genetic types of epilepsy. To me, that's very, very exciting because there's some conditions where it's just been basically a death sentence. There's one, we'll bring it a little bit to something I work on. There's a gene called POLG, which causes a mitochondrial disorder. And a lot of the patients will present when they're infants with very, very bad epilepsy. They're usually admitted for days or weeks every time with seizures that just won't stop. In the meantime, their development regresses. And the data at least used to be that from their symptom onset, they would often not survive more than 3 or 6 months. And I've been working on a clinical trial for that. And the first patient, his name is Liam, I'm allowed to say his name. He was diagnosed it was 4 or 5 years ago now. And his parents were told that. They were told, he probably has 3 to 6 months to live. But he was enrolled in this trial. And it's now, I think 4 years later, and his development's progressing. He hasn't had a seizure in like 3 or 4 years, and he's doing really well. And so there's examples like that where what we thought the natural history of a disease, we're now able to change. I don't know, for these devastating diseases, it's really nice to see it have some hope for those people and their families. Yeah, I think things are going amazingly quickly right now. Again, particularly for rare disease research, it's moving quickly. And I think that governments are supporting and companies are supporting targeted treatments for rare diseases. But also, there are a lot more anti-seizure treatments that would work more generally, that are coming broadly available and have fewer side effects than older treatments. So I think regardless of your cause of epilepsy, there's a lot of hope that things are going to be better just for how quickly things are moving. I really like running. I do a fair bit of running. I have a dog that I really love. So going for runs with my dog is probably one of my favorite things to do. I guess another hobby I've gotten into is composting in my backyard. I order worms and I felt like a more environmentally friendly way to get rid of my dog's poop. Yeah. So that's something that, again, is a little bit weird, but I've gotten a bit excited about. So cool. Yeah, when it's ready, we just put it on our garden. And I used to run marathons a fair bit. I was actually sort of almost national team, but it takes a lot of time to train for marathons. So now I race a bit 5Ks, but because it doesn't take quite as much time to train for that. So.